Hey everyone. So today I just want to speak candidly about some things that are on my mind. Now, this is actually kind of inspired by a Facebook discussion that I had with a mother asking for advice on her Scorpio moon daughter. Just got me thinking about our charts and our moon sign, and specifically with Scorpio moons too, but I don't want to make this just about Scorpio moons because I think that this is something that can be seen in everybody's astrological journey, I guess, if we use astrology correctly. And part of developing in your own chart, because yes, the houses are, areas of life. They're the domains of our life. But if you think about it from the zodiac wheel, like how it actually is, Aries is the beginning, Pisces is the end, and each sign represents like a step in this broader framework that symbolizes human progression and evolution. Because it's like a 12-step system. And that's why every sign carries with it the previous sign's lessons. It takes it and then it does something else with it. It moves forward with those lessons gathered from the sign before it. So houses kind of create areas of our life where we directly encounter these experiences. But if you kind of just expand the view of houses and what they represent, they also outline our own development as well, like on a more personal level, our lifespan development, because we begin with the first house and we end at the 12th house. Now, of course, lifespan and human development, it's not linear. We can go back and forth between steps, and just because, theories propose that certain things will happen at certain ages, it doesn't mean that that's how it's going to be for everyone. Of course, there's individual differences to consider, but if we look at it from a 4th and 10th house perspective, because those two houses are angular houses. Angular houses represent, kind of the key areas of our life. So the 4th house creates where we come from. The 4th house roots our chart. So it holds our family lineage. And what this means is that it contains the stories of our family and our past that then form this narrative, this subjective perspective of our family and where we come from. And it kind of allows our entire subjective perspective that is seen in the chart, like anchors that perspective, because the whole chart is its own perception of reality. And the 4th house kind of is what it derives that perspective from. And the 4th house contains those stories that have been passed down through generations. And this idea of what life is, because it stems from past familial experiences. So to individuate from that is moving to the 10th house, and we have to go through those steps in between. The 2nd and the 3rd quadrants in our chart. When we get to the 10th house, it's like the pinnacle of our charts. We've reached the top, the peak of our chart, and everything beneath us is everything that we have gone through and experienced. And even the 11th and the 12th house kind of, go beyond the 10th house, but they're also leading into the 1st house. So the 10th house is still even above that because it's the top of the chart. And, you could look at it in the midheaven too, but the midheaven is just a point of it. It's the 10th house is more the experiences of it, but it's kind of the same thing. I'm just pointing that out for people who use like equal or whole house systems. And I just think it's interesting that the 4th house shows us that. And when we individuate from the fourth house, from our family, and it doesn't mean that we have to necessarily separate ourselves from them and cut them off. It just means that we establish our own identity apart from that. Now, it could be as simple as creating our own family, you know, moving away, growing up, getting married, all that stuff. Or it could be like completely developing our own sense of values and beliefs that's separate from our family and what we were raised under. But either way, that is part of how we create our 10th house, and what we establish in that 10th house feeds back into the stories of the 4th house, because we're a part of it too. And now the reason why I want to talk about this is the reason why it made me think about how this is connected to the post that I was seeing is that I think in some way we all have to take responsibility for how our subjective perceptions that can be seen in the chart create our view of reality. Because again, just because we view life through a certain lens, and you know the chart can tell you what lens that is, it doesn't mean that that's how things are. And the only reason I want to say that is because I think astrology is really helpful at showing you these perceptions. There's like an opposition with astrology, right? That each side of astrology is equally important, because that's what oppositions are. It's not an either or, it's both. That's like a big lesson of astrology. Using astrology to understand yourself is actually what simultaneously helps you free yourself from astrology. And this is connected to the 4th house, because the 4th house is kind of what roots your subjective perspectives of life, because it's comes from, you know, all these stories that have been passed to you. So it's always gonna be there. And using astrology and seeing the patterns, it shows you those perspectives. You have to understand your chart for what it is, and you have to understand what those perspectives means. You have to get a really good understanding of your chart, and when you do, you can start to identify those patterns when they come up that are seen in the chart. And when you can identify them, you can work through them. You can work beyond them. You can start to get a handle of those perspectives and start to recognize how they might be limiting for you. And when you do that, you know, you're using astrology to understand yourself, but you're also simultaneously like detaching yourself from it. And this is why I always talk about this. It's like, it's seen as like two opposing sides, but they actually go hand in hand, because when you work on your chart and the things in your chart, you're actually working on your detachment from it, your identification with it, and how it's kind of creating this perspective of reality for you. And the reason I wanted to talk about the 4th and the 10th house is because I feel like that opposition that is seen in just the use of astrology in general can be seen in how we remove ourselves from the 4th house and create something new in the 10th house. That separation from the 4th house to the 10th house, and how that establishes something new for ourselves that then becomes our legacy and then cycles back to the 4th house. That is kind of how you can see the process of detaching yourself from the views in your chart itself. And I guess I just spoke about it because this woman, she just kind of said things that I felt like I had gone through myself with my own moon sign, and recognizing how holding on to the perspectives that can be seen in my own chart were affecting my relationships. And that's why I just want to share this, because it just got me thinking. Like, this is just random thoughts that I had. Like I just said, you know, Scorpio moons, just because we view life through this like very intense crisis-filled lens, it doesn't mean that that's the way things are. And Scorpio moons really have to learn to loosen their grip on their emotions and on others and accept things as they are. And that's a really hard lesson for Scorpio moons. It's hard to let go with Scorpio moons, but I mean, that's just an example of Scorpio moons, but I know that everybody, it got me thinking because I'm like, I feel like that's what everybody has to do with their charts. You have to learn to like let it go. And as you work on letting it go on those views, you actually learn to let go of it altogether. So it's not either or, it's not completely separating yourself from astrology. And it's not completely like immersing yourself and identifying solely with your chart and not understanding who you are outside of it. It's both. Both of them go hand in hand. And it's kind of representative of that balance between your 4th and your 10th house, in that you work on what was passed on to you in the 4th house, your own subjective views, to establish yourself in a more self-assured way in the 10th house. And then that kind of helps you go back to your 4th house and create something new, and then that something new in the 4th house creates something new in the 10th house. Like it keeps going and going. Yeah, those are just my random thoughts for today. If you are interested in any other kind of videos, let me know, because yeah, I've just been kind of thinking about what else to do. So yeah, let me know what you'd be interested in seeing, and I'll talk to you next time.